Hi there, my name is Annie Herlocker. Thank you for joining me for Bookmaking with Annie. Today we are going to learn how to do a hexaflexagon, hex for 6 sides, but it's a little bit of a magic trick, this book, because when you fold it down, it appears to have 2 sides, just a hexagon shaped book. By the way, anything can be a book if you put content on those pages, on those surfaces. I'm calling this a book because it's going to tell a story with the images. And 2 sides, but it folds down into 3. So you fold it down into a triangle. You saw the rainbow. I'm going to just pull those sides in, and all of a sudden it's a sun, or a second side. I'm going to pull all those sides in to another triangle and pull it down from the middle again. And I've got clouds and flowers growing. So I've got 3 sides. So again, you fold it into a little triangle, and you can fold down from the middle. 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot of room to have a lot of fun with this, to tell your story, and to have a little bit of a surprise with a magic trick. And there's a little bit of math involved in this, so it's a good STEM activity for all ages. I hope you enjoy it. Let's do it. To make your hexaflexagon, you'll need the following supplies: an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, a glue stick or some double stick tape, a ruler, pencil, a pair of scissors, and or an X-Acto blade. The first step in making the hexaflexagon is actually making an equilateral triangle. This is going to be a template that we're going to use to make the equal triangles that you see on this hexaflexagon. So, and this is an example I did when I was preparing for this video. So it's not completely finished. It's called a mock-up, so it looks taped and it's not perfected, and sometimes it's good to do something like this, a mock-up first, before you do your final version. So if I take apart this mock-up, you will see that it's actually, the hexaflexagon is actually made out of 1 long strip of paper. We're actually going to tape 2 strips of paper here to make this long enough. And each panel is composed of an equilateral triangle. So we're actually just folding all of these triangles into 1 long strip of paper. But to get our first triangle, we have to have the measurement of an equilateral triangle, especially because we're going to need to cut off one end to start our fold. So I have a trick for making an equilateral triangle. We're actually going to do a simple folding trick. So we put that aside. We're going to need to cut a 2 3/4 inch square. So we're going to take our ruler, and I'm just going to make some hash marks so that I know where to cut. So there's 2 3/4. 1, 2 inches. I put a mark on my ruler where 2 3/4 is. And I want to cut a perfect square out of this piece of paper. So I'm going to make 1 mark, pull it down and make 2 marks. Turn this to the side, make another mark, lining up the ruler right on the edge. And then now I can use my ruler to join those lines. So now I have a square, and you can either use a knife or you could use your scissors to cut that square out. So I'm just going to use my scissors here to cut that square. Okay, have my square. I'm going to use this piece of paper for the rest of the hexaflexagon, so I'm going to put that to the side, scissors to the side. So we have our square. Now we're going to do a little bit of fancy folding to get to the point where we have an equilateral triangle. So put your square on the table. You're going to fold this side over to this side. So folding this square straight in half. I'm just going to use my fingernail to crisp up that fold. You should have something like this. I'm going to turn it to the side. Again, fold the other side. I'm going to end up with 4 equal squares within my square. Your paper should look something like that. This part's a little tricky. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. So now we need to make 2 more folds. We're going to fold this corner. This corner, it's going to kind of run along this line. And the goal here is we're folding this square corner in half. So you just kind of gently bend that over. You can see I'm lining up this line until I get to the point where this corner can be folded. And it's a little tricky to get it right in the middle, but just do your best on that, and then still lining that up. And once you have that lined up and this lined up, you can pinch that fold a little flatter. I'll run my fingernail there. So you should have something that looks like this. And I'm going to take a pencil and draw that line so that you can see it a little bit better. So you might even be able to see where we're kind of going with this. Next fold is we're going to do the same on the opposite side. This corner along this lateral line, and by doing so we're folding this corner in half. Here we go. Okay, when you think you've got it, flatten that fold. Run your fingernail along that, open that up. I'm going to run a pencil line on there just so you can see it. There we go. Kind of erase that so it won't be confusing. But essentially what we've done is we've made an equilateral triangle so that our triangle is 60 degrees there, 60 degrees there, 60 degrees there. By folding that the way that we did. So now you can take your scissors and we're going to cut that triangle out. So just cut as far along, as close to along those folds as you can. Okay. And you now have an equilateral triangle. Now that we have our triangle template cut out for our hexaflexagon, we need to cut out our strips of paper. We're actually going to be joining 2 pieces of paper in order to get the hexaflexagon to have enough triangles. We need 10 equilateral triangles folded next to each other in one long strip. This is a mock-up in order to achieve our goal of having the 3-sided structure. And again, that's 1, 2, you kind of pull it down from the top, 3 on one flat surface. There you can see what it looks like when you aren't showing the right side. It kind of mixes itself up. So you've got 1, 2, 3. All formed from one strip of paper. So we need to cut our strip of paper to be exactly the height of our triangle. You can do that by using a ruler and measuring the height of your triangle. You can see here it's just a little bit less than 2.5. Or you can use a different trick and just take your triangle and use that as the ruler. I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to line up one edge of the triangle with this side of the paper and one with that side of the paper and just make a dash. And I've already done that in the middle. And I'm going to do that again here at the bottom. So that kind of works as a ruler itself. And then you take a ruler for the straight edge and join all those little hash marks so that we can make sure that we are making a straight line. At this point you could use scissors, or I'm going to show you now how to use an X-Acto blade. So to use an X-Acto blade, and if you're younger, you want to get a parent, to help you with this. This can be a very dangerous tool. So you always want to keep your blade flat as you can. You never want to press hard. If you find yourself pressing hard, it usually means your blade is dull, so you want to change it out. A blade dull can sometimes be more dangerous than a sharp one because you're pressing hard and you risk slipping and cutting your hand. So I just did one gentle pass through to get my first strip, and now I'm going to cut my second strip. To do your second strip, you could actually use this strip as your ruler. So I'm going to line those edges up. I'm going to just line those up. You really want both strips to be the same size. So you would want your edges to really match up, or you could use the triangle to measure your second strip. And then again, you're going to cut along the line, or you're going to trim it with a blade. And now you can discard this piece, and now you have your two strips. You can put that to the side. I think it's good to have things off your workspace as you're moving along here. So I'm going to grab a scratch sheet of paper, and what I'm going to do is I need to attach these two strips. So you can just grab a glue stick, or you could use some glue, and you don't really need to measure out, but I'm just going to take maybe an inch worth here, an inch's worth of paper, and just glue right to the edge. And then just lay that right on top. As evenly, you want to match up both sides as evenly as possible, and then just flatten it down. Now before we fold, I would recommend letting this dry for a couple minutes, and then we'll move on to our next step. Now you have your long strip of paper. We're going to get our first triangle folded with the help of this template. So lay your strip down, and then we're going to place the equilateral triangle along the strip. If your triangle ends up being taller than your strip or quite shorter, you'll need to recut your strip of paper. So if your triangle ends up being shorter than your triangle, you can just trim your existing strip. But if it ends up being bigger, I would recommend just cutting new strips of paper as opposed to trying to make your triangle smaller at this point. So line that up so your edge is along there, straight along there. Take your pencil and draw a line. So we're just trimming essentially our first triangle. I'm going to grab my scissors here, and you just want to trim as straight along that line as you can. And you can discard that piece of paper. Now is the fun part. So now we're going to fold 10 equilateral triangles. We're going to start folding here. So essentially you're going to fold 10 triangles on top of each other. The first one is this edge to this edge. So we're folding that edge up. And then the starting can be a little bit tricky, but once you get your first few, it becomes a little bit easier. You want to be real crisp, folding those corners just straight in the middle there, making sure that lines up. And then you can pinch that together. You can use your fingernail to crisp up your fold, and then you flip it over, and we're going to do that again, folding this edge to the top edge. Those triangles are right on top of each other. I think it becomes kind of fun once you start doing this and you start seeing them stack up on top of each other. Fold, flip. There will be some wiggle room if you feel like your triangles aren't folded exactly in half, or rather not totally on top of each other. We'll have a little bit of wiggle room, but just do your best to get them on top of each other. Again, folding up and then flip over. At some point you will cross over the joint line of the paper that we joined together. You can see that one's not quite, so I'm just going to tug at it a little bit to try to get that a little more in the middle. And keep folding. I'm Now I've lost track of how many I've folded, but I think we're almost there. We'll unfold it and we'll do a double check to see where we're at. And again, that one is not. There you go. Cut that off. All right, we've got our 10 triangles. Now we're ready for the folding. I think the folding is the fun part, and that's where our 6 sides come together, because it is a hexaflexagon, which means 6 sides. So I like to show the folding by looking at it this way. It just makes it a little easier to explain. So I'm going to have my straight edge of this triangle in the middle here. I'm going to have the angled side facing outward. And you're just going to hold that, and it kind of folds in on itself on its own. So I'm just lifting up the bottom piece there. And now you can see it starting to take shape. Fold that in. And I'm going to lift this right piece forward. And it's starting to look like a hexaflexagon. This is my 10th triangle, or my flap. I'm going to actually apply glue, or double stick tape works too. And then I'm going to tuck that in to attach there. So I'm going to grab a scratch sheet of paper. I'm going to fold that up. Grab my glue stick. And you're going to glue the entire triangle. The advantage of the double stick tape is if you somehow put the last flap, if you're attaching it to the wrong square, you can easily undo it. With the glue is a little bit more permanent. So if you want to, if this is your, so I have the flap glued. I'm going to fold that down, and then I want to place that glued flap just as evenly as I can on that triangle right behind it, which is going to be a little tricky. But once you place it, you should be able to kind of maneuver it before it's dried. And then just use your fingers there to flatten that down. You may get a little glue popping through the seams there, but just lift it up and let that dry. It's starting to take shape. And once that has dried, you can start folding it and start thinking about what you'll put on all your 3 surfaces. So the way this works is you fold it into a little bit of a triangle like that, and then you pull down from the center. It's the easiest way to explain it. And it turns into a triangle. Pull down from the center. And there you have it, hexaflexagon. And here again is the one with the content on it. The most fun thing about these is the content. You can do all kinds of things with this. With this little drawing I did just with some gel pens of just some of the weather we've been seeing in the past few weeks here. Rain showers bring flowers. Rainbow, sun. I hope you enjoy making the hexaflexagon. I hope you have fun with it, and leave pictures of what you've made in the comments. And thank you so much for joining me for Bookmaking with Annie.